All right, so the back page for part 2. 5 and 6 are what we call a mapping. So it takes every x value to a y value and it makes an xy coordinate, okay? So let's start with 6 and then we'll talk about 5. So 6, like if I made a list of xy coordinates, this is mapping from 2 to 7, so that would make the point 2, 7, okay? Then 8 goes to 0, that would give me a coordinate point of 8, 0. 13 goes to -4, so I'd have 13, -4. And then my last 17 to 7, those would be your xy points, okay? You absolutely do not have to write those out, but just so you know what a mapping means. It's taking one x to a y, and you can turn them into xy coordinates, okay? So our domain is very simple there. I mean, it's just already listed for you. 2, 8, 13, 17. And your range is listed for you. -4, 0, 7. Okay. Now, is this a function? So, if we look at the x's, none of them are repeating. Even though y has 2 arrows going to 7, that's not what we care about. We want the x's to not repeat. And they only have 1 arrow going across for each one. So that's a no. Oh, sorry. That's a yes. Okay, so keeping that in mind, look at number 5. All right, -4 would go to 0. -2 would go to 3. But 5 goes to 7 and 5 goes to 9. So if I was to write these points out, I get -4, 0. Oh, sorry, these are xy's, so these should be parentheses. All right, -2, 3, 5, 7, and 5, 9. Okay, so this is actually mapping 2 arrows from 1 x coordinate. That makes it not a function. Because if we graph this on 5, we'd have a point at 7 and a point at 9, and it would fail the vertical line test. Okay? So, domain and range is super simple for a mapping because it's already listed. And again, this is not a function because there's 2 x's that have a y value. It would fail the vertical line test. Okay, so 7 actually is a discrete graph. So the only way to really write your domain and range is to find the xy coordinates and then list them out and write the x's and the y's, okay? So this first xy coordinate is at -3, 1. So I'm at -3, 1. Okay, then I have -3, -2. Okay, then I have 0, 4. Okay, and then I have 2, -1. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 4, -5. Okay, so I listed them top to bottom so I could see all of my domains are the x's and all of my ranges are y. And if they repeat, I'm just going to write them once. Okay, so my domain is -3, 0, 2, 4. And the range, 1, -2, 4, -1, -5. Okay, so that's my domain, that's my range. And then if you look at the graph, if you didn't list these at all and it just said, what is this a function or not, then I absolutely would have just done the vertical line test, okay? And you can tell that At -3, it fails because it's hitting the 2 dots or the 2 points more than once. Okay, so function, no. But since it asked us for domain and range, that's why I wrote everything out. Okay, and keep in mind on multiple choice, or if you're like matching answers up, these are all going to be written low to high. So just keep in mind, like, this isn't wrong, but technically the math way we should have written it -5, -2, -1, and then 1, and then 4. Okay, just so you know. So just keep that in mind. All right, cool. Next, so we have a line. All right, so the domain, we've got to think about what these arrows mean. So that really means the graph is going to go on forever. Okay, or it'd be going all the way to -infinity and all the way to infinity. So when we do domain, we're thinking about left to right because that's the x-axis, okay? So if it's going all the way left and all the way right, we call that all real numbers. And that gives, we give that a double R. Okay, all real numbers, or that R there. There we go. Okay. And if we think about range, we're really talking about how far up and how far down does this graph go. So not only is this line going all the way left and all the way right, as you expand it more and more and more, it's also going all the way down and all the way up too, okay? So that is also all real numbers. Okay, so the domain and range are both all real numbers. Now, to answer, is this a function? Well, if I did the vertical line test anywhere, okay, it's only hitting the line one time, so yes. All right, next domain, number 9, domain and range. First of all, is this a function? Well, if I take the vertical line test, even the first thing I drew, it's hitting twice, so that's a no. Okay? But our domain, so we're thinking about what x values does this graph take up, okay? So if I look at for what x is this graph taking up, well, it continues forever, but there's a clear starting point, and that's right here. That's where my graph starts, okay? And then that's at -1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we know it's starting at -4, and we want x for domain. And then your graph is going to the right of -4. So that means it's going greater than or equal to -4. Okay? Because the domain includes -4 and also goes all the way right. That's greater than or equal to -4. Okay, our range. Our range, well, if we look at this graph and think about it continuing, it would be going all the way up and all the way down for y. Okay, so that's all real numbers for the range. And that happens a lot with lines, functions that have arrows at the end with lines, or even parabolas, happens a lot. Okay. All right, so let's look at 10, domain and range here. Okay, so domain, we care about the x values. And if I went to the farthest right x and the farthest left x, you can see that this graph only takes up this chunk of x's, okay? It only takes up that chunk of x's. So here's like an endpoint. That's at -2. Then my circle also stops at 5. Okay, So really your domain is only between -2 and 5. There's no other x values outside of that. Okay, so that becomes a squeeze or an and inequality where you squeeze x between two values. All right, that's the domain. Now the range, if you take the highest most point and find the y value of it, and then the lowest most point and find the y value of it, y is taking up, I'll draw it both sides, but y is taking up that height, okay? So that means it's going as low as -2 and as high as, is that just 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, as 4, okay? So it's going as low as 2 and as high as 4. So again, we're going to squeeze now this time y there, because range is y. All right, so the height is from -2 to 4 of the circle, and the width goes from -2 to 5 of the circle. If you want to write that down, that may help you. Height of the function, width of the function. That may help. All right, and then is this a function? Obviously not. Any vertical line test that's inside, like in the middle of the circle, hits more than once, so no. Okay. Now, I'm going to skip 11 for now. So we're going to talk more about domain and range of functions. If you want to graph that, it'd be pretty obvious, but since we don't have a graph, I'm just going to skip it for now. All right. Number 12. -5x minus 1. Okay, the domain there, I'm going to skip that for a second, and I'm going to talk about the range, because this makes, well, this is a line. This is y equals mx plus b. Right? So this becomes a line. It has a negative slope. Oh, actually, yeah, we can talk about both the domain and the range here. That's a negative slope. Okay? So domain, it's going to go all the way left and all the way right if you expand it. That's all real numbers. Okay, and the range will also go all the way up and all the way down, all real numbers. And yes, this is a function. So this is very similar to number 8 that we did. And I would graph this in y equals and click graph in your calculator if that's still confusing to you. All right, so for 13, I'm going to sketch the graph and then we'll find the domain and range. Okay, so y equals -7 would be a horizontal line at -7. Okay, so anytime you have a horizontal or a vertical, either your domain or your range, one of those is going to be all real numbers. So think about, like, is this graph going all the way left and all the way right in both directions forever if you expand it, or is it going all the way up and all the way down? Because domain cares about left and right, range cares about up and down. All right, well, if you expand this, this could keep going all the way left forever and all the way right forever. So that means the domain is all real numbers. Okay? And here's another hint. Well, what is the range? Well, this equals y. So the range is what we can specify. And all along this entire horizontal line, the y is only one value. It's only y equals -7. Okay? And is this a function? Vertical line test? Yes, definitely. All right, last one. So x equals -1, and you can just graph this on your calculator if you have it. If not, sketch the graph. X equals -1 is that. All right, and let's use what we knew about 13 to help us with 14. So if I'm given a specific x value, that has to go in my domain. Okay. And then it's going, range we care about all the way up, all the way down. Okay, domain we care about left and right. Range, if I keep going, this is going all the way up and then all the way down as you expand the graph, because those arrows mean it goes on forever. That's all real numbers for the range. Okay, and is this a function? Well, if I did a vertical line test on this line, it's hitting everywhere. It's hitting every single point way more than once. So that means no, not a function. Okay, that's it.